Tapering can drastically increase your performance in competition. In this video, we are going to break down when to start to taper, how to adjust your training, and what to do on race day. The goal of a taper is that you arrive fresh, fast and ready at your next Hyrox race. To achieve that, we have a reduction in training volume while maintaining the intensity, to let the fatigue dissipate while maintaining the fitness that you've built over the time. Now let's get straight to it. When would you start tapering? Usually we recommend tapering 7 to 14 days out from the competition. Let's say your race is on a Saturday. Then 1 to 2 weeks out from that particular race date, you want to start making adjustments to your training to aid your performance. Now we understand that 7 to 14 days is quite a large range. So who should taper less and who should taper more? If you rather train a lot of volume with a lot of intensity, we recommend using more time for your taper and more gradually decrease the load of your training. On the other hand, if you don't train as much and maybe just do 3 to 5 sessions a week at a lower overall volume, a shorter taper might work just as well for you. Now let's talk about all the specific adjustments in your training. We start with the running. For all of your running sessions, we would recommend that you reduce the overall volume while maintaining the intensity. That means you would eliminate your long runs or shorten them and do them at a slower intensity. And for your interval sessions, especially the sessions that happen at race pace, we would advise a reduction in volume of about 50%. So let's say you have planned regularly 6 1K repeats at your race pace with 2 minutes of rest in between. During your taper, you would reduce that to 3 1K repeats at the same intensity to maintain your fitness while making the fatigue dissipate. Another alteration to your running would be including strides more often. That means we have some particular speed work, for example, integrated in a longer run of 100 to maybe 300 meter repeats at your race pace or slightly faster to really get into a nice rhythm and then feel the speed and optimize your stride for race day without creating too much fatigue. That means to really prioritize the speed you're getting from your reps of the strides, you want to have a long rest in between and rest until full recovery. An example session here could be a 30-minute easy run, and at the 10-minute mark, you do 4 reps of 200 meter repeats with about 3 minutes of rest in between. That means you run 200 meters at a quick pace, and then there's a slow jog in between each rep. Okay, next we talk about alterations to strength training. Here we usually recommend working in the range of 60 to 80% of your 1 rep maximum and reducing the volume by around 50% of what you would usually be doing. That means we wouldn't work towards the top end numbers as this is not too relevant for Hyrox. We just want to make sure that you stay fresh and sharp during your lifting sessions. The closer you get to your race, let's say 3 to 5 days out from your competition, we would recommend that you reduce or even take completely out heavy lower body exercise like lunges, squats, deadlifts, as these are not very specific for the race and rather should allow you to build strength for the race. But there's not much strength to be built if you're that close to the competition. Finally, let's talk about the Hyrox-specific workouts or metcons that you do in your training. Here also we would recommend that you reduce the overall volume. For example, instead of doing 50-minute workouts, we would reduce it to 20 to 25-minute workouts. And if you do repeats or interval sessions, you should increase the rest to allow for more movement quality and speed during each of these intervals. The idea here as well is to keep these workouts as specific to the race as possible. That means if you would usually include movements like box jumps or dumbbell snatches, which might be great for Hyrox training as well, you want to mostly rely on Hyrox-specific station work for your tapering. That means when we use machines, we only want to use ski and row instead of a bike. And then when we use lower body movements, we mostly want to focus on lunges and wall balls. And then other exercise variations would also be something we would stay away from, and we would mostly rely on broad jumps or farmer's carry. Now that we have all these adjustments to training covered, we want to talk about another area that is important for tapering, which is recovery, nutrition and sleep. While all of these may sound obvious to you, here are some examples of what you could do to further aid recovery and also improve your performance on race day. The first one is prioritize mobility work and post and pre-workout stretching for every single session that you do. As the sessions are reduced in volume overall anyways, you will have more time to look after your body and make sure you're really warmed up properly and on point for every single workout so you get the most out of it. Then an obvious one is during your taper, you want to reduce stress as much as possible. If this is, for example, something work-related, you want to make sure that everything is sorted out before going into this, as far as possible, of course. And then you really want to prioritize sleep. So for sleep, in general, a nice routine works the best anyways, so you shouldn't make too many altercations from your usual routine. But if there's something to improve, you might already know, and we would recommend that you really try to dial it in so you're well recovered as you wake up and ready to hit your sessions. Then as far as nutrition goes, you always want to maintain adequate protein intake. Here we would usually recommend 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight and then maintaining that all year round. And then for the carbohydrates, this is something you want to increase slightly every day the closer you get to the competition. That means 3 days out from the competition, you really want to focus on dialing in your carb intake by just increasing the amount of maybe pasta, white rice, or even supplements you might take around your training. This should ensure that your glycogen stores are well replenished as you go into the competition and you really have something to rely on for these high glycolytic power outputs. Then the last one is you really want to avoid any last-minute diet experiments. That means just have your regular meals, use foods that you know that work well for you, and don't try anything new in the supplement department as well. So don't try a new pre-workout as you go to the race. And also things as simple as your breakfast should be something that you're used to and you've had already on a regular basis and you had good experiences with. Okay, now that we have most bases covered, let's get more into the specifics of what should we do as race day comes closer. 2 to 3 days out from our competition, we really want to reduce the training that we're doing. Here, you should really keep it light and focus on moving sharp and with intent, as we spoke about earlier. And here you shouldn't be doing any targeted strength work anymore. It should just be specific towards the race. That means you could do some faster running repeats at your race pace, just making sure that you keep them really short with long rests in between. We get closer towards the race and we're just 24 hours out. Here you don't want to be doing any serious training anymore. You might just want to do a light jog to loosen up the legs and maybe include 1 or 2 strides or even some boundings to really feel sharp and explosive for your race day. Another thing for one day out is an early bedtime that you have scheduled in. So you don't want to have any meetings or calls whenever possible, and make sure that you can go to bed as early as possible. Okay, now that we have given you a detailed overview of what tapering should look like, here's a quick breakdown. Reduce training volume by about 50% while maintaining the intensity. Making sure every session is prepared properly. That means you have your mobility routine dialed in. After each session, you want to be fueling properly, especially focusing on the carbs to really replenish all the glycogen that you have burned off during the session. And you make sure that you get adequate recovery, especially the closer you get towards the race. Then you want to include race-specific efforts at a high intensity with a lot of rest in between these efforts to make sure you're sharp and let the fatigue dissipate while maintaining your fitness. If you are interested in how we would design a taper week for a Hyrox race, you can check out our program in the description below, as we have all the training you would need leading up to the race, as well as the specifics of the taper week all laid out in a PDF format. Now, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.